funeral director handed me a tissue like it was some kind of consolation prize. I stared at the casket, mahogany gleaming under those harsh fluorescent lights, and wondered if 10 years of my life had been worth this moment. My name is Daphne, and I just buried the only person who ever really saw me. She looks so peaceful, Aunt Elizabeth whispered, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Like she's finally free from all that suffering. I wanted to laugh. Grandma Gertrude had been sharp as a tack until the very end, despite what Elizabeth liked to tell people. The suffering had been mine, watching my 20s disappear into a blur of doctor appointments, medication schedules, and sleepless nights while my cousins posted vacation photos on social media. Daphne did such a wonderful job caring for her, Elizabeth continued, her voice carrying that syrupy tone she used when she wanted something. We're all so grateful. Derek, her golden boy, nodded solemnly. At 29, he still lived in his mother's basement, but somehow managed to look down on me. Yeah, it must have been really hard giving up your whole life like that. The way he said it made my skin crawl, like I'd had a choice, like anyone else had stepped up when Grandma started forgetting to turn off the stove. Someone had to do it, I said quietly. Sonia, Elizabeth's daughter, squeezed my shoulder with perfectly manicured nails. Well, now you can finally live your life. Maybe travel, meet someone special. She exchanged a look with her mother that I pretended not to catch. My mother Sarah stood behind them, silent as always. She'd perfected the art of being present without actually being there. When I caught her eye, she looked away quickly, focusing on the flower arrangements like they held the secrets of the universe. The service was everything Grandma would have hated, stuffy, formal, full of people who hadn't visited her in years, suddenly acting like they'd lost their best friend. I sat in the front row, listening to Elizabeth's crocodile tears and Derek's fake eulogy about what an inspiration Grandma had been. After the burial, people filtered back to the house, my house, though I was starting to wonder if anyone else remembered that. Elizabeth had already started rearranging things, moving Grandma's favourite chair to make room for a folding table laden with casseroles from neighbours who barely knew us. "This potato salad is divine," Elizabeth announced to no one in particular. "I should get the recipe." I escaped to Grandma's bedroom, where pill bottles still lined the nightstand like tiny soldiers. Morphine, blood pressure medication, heart pills, the pharmaceutical army that had kept her comfortable in those final months. I started gathering them up, planning to take them to the pharmacy for disposal. That's when Elizabeth appeared in the doorway. "Daphne, honey, we need to talk." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. She wasn't alone. Derek and Sonia flanked her like bodyguards, and Mum hovered behind them, wringing her hands. "What's this about?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Elizabeth pulled out a manila envelope, handling it like it contained the crown jewels. "We found this in your grandmother's papers. Her will." The room went silent except for the tick of Grandma's old clock. I set down the pill bottles carefully, buying myself time to think. "I know what Grandma's will says, Elizabeth." "Do you?" She slid the papers across the dresser, because according to this, the house goes to me. As the eldest daughter, she felt it was appropriate. I stared at the document, my vision blurring slightly. The signature looked right, the letterhead was correct, but something felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. "This doesn't make sense," I whispered. "She promised me." "Promises aren't legal documents," Derek interrupted. "Mum's been managing Grandma's affairs for months. She knew what was best." "Managing her affairs?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "I was here every single day. I gave up everything." "And we're grateful," Elizabeth said smoothly. "But the house needs to stay in the family. Real family." The implication hit like a slap. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say something, anything. She studied her shoes like they were the most fascinating things in the world. "I need you to pack your things," Elizabeth continued. "We'll give you an hour to get what you need. The rest can be sorted out later." An hour? 10 years of my life, and she was giving me an hour. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet and started throwing clothes into it, my hands shaking with rage and disbelief. They watched me like I might steal something, as if I hadn't earned every single item in this house through blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. As I walked out the front door with my pathetic suitcase, Elizabeth called after me. "This is for the best, dear, you'll see." I didn't turn around. I couldn't let them see the tears, couldn't give them that satisfaction. But as I reached my car, I whispered a promise to the empty street. "We'll see about that." The Sunset Motel wasn't exactly the Ritz, but it was what my credit card could handle. $49 a night for a room that smelled like stale cigarettes and broken dreams. The bedspread had seen better decades, and the air conditioner wheezed like it was on life support. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my suitcase, everything I owned in the world crammed into one piece of luggage. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 10 years accumulating nothing because every penny went to Grandma's care. My phone buzzed. Colin's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," I answered, my voice hoarse from crying. "Jesus, Daphne, I just heard. Are you okay? Where are you?" Colin had been Grandma's neighbour until he'd moved across town after some falling out with Elizabeth years ago. He was one of the few people who'd actually visited during those long years, bringing groceries when I couldn't leave Grandma alone. "I'm at the Sunset Motel on Route 9. "The one with the broken neon sign?" "Christ. Look, you can stay at my place. I'm fine here." I wasn't, but I needed space to think. Baby, this is insane. Everyone knows you took care of her. Everyone knows she wanted you to have that house." Apparently, not everyone. I picked at a loose thread on the bedspread. Elizabeth had a will, official looking, signed the whole thing. "Bullshit. Your grandmother talked about leaving you that house for years. She told half the neighbourhood." Something in his tone made me sit up straighter. "What do you mean?" "I mean people are talking, Daphne, and not in a good way." My stomach clenched. "What kind of talking?" "Elizabeth's been making the rounds, telling people you were manipulative, that you isolated your grandmother, controlled her finances. She's saying you probably forged documents yourself and got caught." The room spun slightly. "She's what?" "I'm sorry, I thought you should know. Mrs. Patterson from the grocery store actually asked me if it was true that you'd been stealing from your grandmother's purse." I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying to process this new level of betrayal. "Colin, I would never." "I know that. Anyone with half a brain knows that. But Elizabeth's convincing, and people love drama." After we hung up, I tried calling my mother, straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Same thing. The third time, she finally picked up. "Daphne." "Mum, we need to talk." "I don't think that's a good idea right now." "Not a good idea," my voice cracked. "Your sister just threw me out of my own house with a forged will, and you think talking isn't a good idea?" Silence stretched between us like a chasm. "It's not forged, honey. I saw your grandmother sign it." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You what?" "She was confused toward the end. You know that. Elizabeth was just looking out for everyone's best interests." "My best interests? Mum, I gave up everything. I haven't been on a date in 3 years. I haven't taken a vacation in a decade. I watched my friends get married and have kids while I measured out pills and changed bedsheets." "No one asked you to do that." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. "She was your mother too. And she's gone now. Fighting about this won't bring her back. This isn't about bringing her back. This is about justice. This is about—" The line went dead. I threw the phone across the room, where it bounced off the wall and clattered to the floor. The screen cracked in a spiderweb pattern which seemed fitting. That's when I remembered the suitcase. I'd packed in such a rage that I'd grabbed things randomly, clothes, toiletries, whatever I could shove in quickly. But there, wedged between my winter coat and a pair of jeans, was a manila folder. My hand shook as I pulled it out. Inside were documents I'd almost forgotten about. Papers Grandma and I had signed 6 months ago during one of her good days. The memory came flooding back. We'd been sitting in Camilla's law office, Grandma's hand steady as she signed document after document. "This is called a transfer on death deed," Camilla had explained. "It means the house transfers directly to Daphne upon your death, bypassing probate entirely. And Elizabeth can't contest it," Grandma had asked, her eyes sharp and focused. "Not if it's properly filed and recorded, which it will be." I'd forgotten about it in the chaos of Grandma's final weeks, when every day was a blur of doctor visits and medication adjustments. But here it was, official and legal, and completely separate from any will Elizabeth might have produced. I spread the papers across the motel's tiny table, reading every word twice. The deed was clear, notarized, and according to the filing stamp, officially recorded with the county 6 months ago. Elizabeth had no idea this existed. I picked up my cracked phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Camilla's number. It was late, but this couldn't wait. "Camilla, it's Daphne. I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning." "Of course, dear. I heard about your grandmother. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you, but that's not why I'm calling." I stared at the deed, feeling something like hope stirring in my chest for the first time in days. "I think we need to discuss that transfer on death deed." "Huh?" Her voice changed, becoming more alert. "Yes, I think we do. Can you be here at 9? After I hung up, I sat back on the bed and looked around the shabby motel room. Tomorrow, everything would change. Elizabeth thought she'd won, thought she'd gotten away with her little scheme. I wiped my eyes and whispered to the empty room, "Now you're going to see how it feels." I drove past the house 3 times before parking across the street. Every window blazed with light, and I could hear laughter spilling out into the night air. Elizabeth's car sat in the driveway next to Derek's pickup truck, like they owned the place. Which, according to them, they did. Through the kitchen window, I watched Elizabeth holding court at Grandma's dining table, my dining table, gesturing wildly with a wineglass in her hand. Derek lounged in Grandma's favourite recliner, feet up like he was king of the castle. Sonia sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone and giggling at something on the screen. They were celebrating. A moving truck had been there earlier, judging by the boxes stacked in the living room. They weren't wasting any time making themselves at home. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, remembering all the nights I'd sat in that same kitchen, feeding Grandma soup when she was too weak to hold the spoon herself. The countless hours I'd spent in that living room, reading to her when her eyes got too tired for books. "Don't let them take what's yours, sweetheart." Grandma's last words to me, whispered when she thought I was asleep in the chair beside her bed. "Promise me?" I'd promised, and I was going to keep that promise. The next morning, Camilla's office smelled like coffee and old leather. She was already waiting when I arrived, the transfer on death deed spread across her mahogany desk. "I filed this myself 6 months ago," she said, tapping the document with her pen. "Your grandmother was very specific about her wishes. She wanted to make sure you were protected." "Protected from what?" Camilla's expression darkened. "From exactly what's happening now. Your grandmother suspected Elizabeth might try something like this." She knew. She'd caught Elizabeth going through her papers several times. Small things at first, looking through bank statements, asking pointed questions about her assets. Your grandmother wasn't fooled. I sank into the leather chair across from her desk. "So the house is really mine?" "Legally, yes. The transfer on death deed supersedes any will. The property transferred to you the moment your grandmother passed away." Camilla leaned forward. But there's something else you need to know. My stomach dropped. What? I've been reviewing your grandmother's financial records. There are some irregularities. She pulled out a thick folder and opened it to reveal bank statements and cancelled checks. Look at these withdrawals. 500 here, 800 there, always signed by Elizabeth as your grandmother's power of attorney. I scanned the papers, my anger building with each entry. How much? Over the past 2 years, nearly $30,000. The number hit me like a punch to the gut. 30,000? Your grandmother never mentioned giving Elizabeth money? Never. She was always worried about having enough for her medical expenses. I thought about all the times I'd paid for groceries out of my own pocket, all the times I'd skipped meals to make sure Grandma had what she needed. There's more. Camilla flipped to another section. Several pieces of jewellery are missing from the safety deposit box inventory, items your grandmother specifically wanted you to have. Elizabeth took them. I can't prove it yet, but the timing is suspicious. These items were removed just 2 weeks before your grandmother's death. I stared at the evidence spread across the desk, feeling sick. What do we do? First, we contact the police. Elizabeth is currently occupying your property illegally. Second, we file a complaint about the financial irregularities and the missing jewellery. Camilla's voice was crisp, professional. And third, we make sure that Forged will get the attention it deserves. Forged? Oh yes, I've seen your grandmother's signature thousands of times over the years. That will Elizabeth produced? It's a decent fake, but it's still a fake. An hour later, I sat in my car outside the police station, hands shaking as I dialed the non-emergency number. I need to report someone illegally occupying my property, I told the dispatcher. Are you the legal owner of the property, ma'am? Yes, I have the deed right here. We can have an officer meet you there in about 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I drove back to the house and parked in the same spot as the night before. Elizabeth's car was still there, along with Derek's truck. Through the window, I could see them moving around, probably deciding which of Grandma's things to keep and which to throw away. My phone buzzed with a text from Colin. Heard through the grapevine that Elizabeth's telling people you're mentally unstable. Says the stress of caregiving broke you. Just thought you should know. I typed back, thanks for the warning, but I'm not the one who's about to be broken. The police cruiser pulled up just as I hit send. Officer Henderson climbed out, a tall man with kind eyes and greying temples. His partner, a younger woman, followed behind him. "You're Daphne?" Henderson asked. "That's me." I handed him the transfer on death deed. "That's my house, and those people inside have no legal right to be there." He studied the document carefully, then looked up at the house where Elizabeth was visible through the kitchen window, still holding her wineglass. "All right," he said. "Let's go have a conversation." As we walked up the front steps, I caught a glimpse of Elizabeth's face through the window. The wineglass slipped from her hand and shattered on the kitchen floor. "This should be interesting," Henderson's partner murmured. I smiled for the first time in days. "You have no idea." Officer Henderson knocked on the front door with the kind of authority that made my heart race. I stood behind him, clutching the deed like a lifeline. Elizabeth opened the door with a bright smile that faltered the moment she saw the uniforms. "Officers, is everything all right?" "Ma'am, we need to speak with you about this property. Are you Elizabeth?" "Yes, but I don't understand." "We have a legal document here showing that this house belongs to Daphne." Henderson held up the deed. "She's asked us to escort you off the premises." Elizabeth's face went through about 5 different expressions before settling on indignant outrage. "That's ridiculous. I have my mother's will right here. The house is mine." Derek appeared behind her, chest puffed out like he was ready for a fight. "What's this about?" "Your cousin has some paperwork that contradicts your mother's will," Henderson's partner explained calmly. Paperwork can be faked, Derek snapped, glaring at me. She's been planning this for months, probably had some shady lawyer forge documents. The transfer on death deed was filed with the county 6 months ago, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It's public record. Elizabeth's face went pale. That's impossible. Mother would have told me. Would she? I stepped forward. Like she told you about the $30,000 you withdrew from her accounts. The silence that followed was deafening. Sonia appeared in the hallway behind them, looking confused and scared. What $30,000? Derek demanded. Elizabeth shot me a look that could have melted steel. I don't know what she's talking about. The bank records say otherwise, I replied, along with the missing jewellery from her safety deposit box. You're lying. But Elizabeth's voice cracked slightly. Officer Henderson stepped between us. Ladies, we're not here to litigate financial matters. We're here because this deed shows Daphne as the legal owner of this property. Ma'am, do you have documentation proving your right to be here? Elizabeth fumbled for her purse, pulling out the will with shaking hands. This is my mother's will. It clearly states. Henderson's partner examined it briefly. Ma'am, a will has to go through probate. This transfer on death deed bypasses that entirely. The property transferred automatically upon death. But the will doesn't override a properly filed deed, Henderson finished. I'm going to need you and your family to gather your belongings and vacate the premises. Derek exploded. This is bullshit. She manipulated a sick old woman into signing papers. She probably threatened her. That's enough, Henderson's voice carried a warning. You can contest this through the proper legal channels, but right now you need to leave. We're not going anywhere, Derek stepped forward aggressively. This is our house now. Henderson's hand moved to his belt. Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. This psycho bitch has been planning this for years. She isolated our grandmother, turned her against us. Derek, stop, Sonia whispered, tugging at his arm, but he was on a roll. She's probably been forging checks, stealing money, God knows what else. And now she shows up with fake papers. The papers aren't fake, I said quietly. But that will you're holding, that signature isn't Grandma's. Elizabeth's face went white as paper. How dare you? I watched her sign documents for 10 years. I know her handwriting better than my own. I looked directly at her. You want to keep playing this game? Because I have a lot more evidence where this came from. Henderson stepped forward. All right, that's enough. Ma'am, you have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings and leave. If you're not out by then, you'll be arrested for trespassing. This isn't over, Elizabeth hissed as she pushed past me. You think you're so smart? You have no idea what you've started. Actually, I think I'm finishing what you started, I replied. The next 30 minutes were a blur of angry voices, slamming doors and boxes being dragged across the floor. Derek kept muttering threats under his breath, while Sonia cried quietly in the corner. Elizabeth moved through the house like a woman possessed, grabbing things that didn't belong to her. That's my grandmother's china, I said, as she headed for the door with a box. Prove it, she snapped. Henderson's partner gently took the box from her hands. Ma'am, you can sort out personal belongings through your lawyer. Right now, you need to leave. My mother appeared on the sidewalk as they were loading their cars. She stood there watching, her face unreadable. Mum, I called out. She looked at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away without a word. Elizabeth paused at her car door, looking back at the house with pure hatred in her eyes. You want this house so badly? Fine, but don't think this makes you family. You're nothing. You've always been nothing. Maybe, I said, but I'm nothing with a house. As their cars disappeared down the street, Henderson handed me the keys. The property is secure. You might want to change the locks just in case. I stood on the front porch, watching the taillights fade into the distance. The house felt different already, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. But Elizabeth's parting words echoed in my mind. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The first shot came through social media. I woke up to 17 missed calls and a Facebook post that had been shared 43 times overnight, heartbroken to share that my elderly mother was manipulated and abused by her own granddaughter in her final years. Daphne isolated her from family, controlled her finances, and coerced her into signing documents while she was mentally compromised. We're devastated but fighting for justice. Please keep our family in your prayers during this difficult time. Elder abuse. Make it justice for Grandma. The comments were brutal. People I'd gone to high school with, neighbours I'd waved to for years, all expressing their shock and disgust. Someone had even shared the post in the local community Facebook group. My phone rang. Colin. "Have you seen it?" he asked without preamble. "I'm looking at it now." "It gets worse. Check the community page." I switched over and felt my stomach drop. Elizabeth had posted screenshots of what looked like bank statements, with certain transactions highlighted. The amounts were real, but the context was completely twisted. "These are the groceries I bought for Grandma," I said into the phone. "The pharmacy runs, the medical supplies." "I know that. You know that. But to someone just scrolling through, it looks like you were bleeding her dry." The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Mrs. Patterson from the grocery store, standing on my porch with her arms crossed. "I have to go," I told Colin. Mrs. Patterson didn't wait for me to speak. "I can't believe you'd show your face around here after what you did to that poor woman." "Mrs. Patterson, I don't know what you've heard, but I've heard plenty. Taking money from a sick old lady, keeping her family away. You should be ashamed of yourself." "I took care of her for 10 years. I gave up everything." "You gave up nothing. You lived rent-free in that house while the rest of us work for a living." She turned and walked away, calling over her shoulder, "Don't expect to be welcome in my store anymore." By noon, 3 more neighbours had confronted me. The mailman wouldn't make eye contact. Someone had egged my car. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We know what you did. Karma's coming for you." I called Camila. "I've been expecting your call," she said. "I've seen the posts. Elizabeth's been busy." "Can we sue her for defamation?" "Possibly, but that's not our biggest problem right now. Derek filed a police report this morning claiming you forged the transfer on death deed." My blood ran cold. "What?" "It's clearly retaliatory, but we'll need to address it. I've already contacted Detective Morrison. She wants to meet with us this afternoon." "This is insane. They're the ones who forged the will." "I know, and I have proof. But Daphne, there's something else you need to know." The pause stretched too long. "What?" "I've been digging deeper into Elizabeth's activities. The financial irregularities go back further than we thought. She's been systematically draining your grandmother's accounts for over 3 years." 3 years? And there's more. I found evidence that she tried to have your grandmother declared mentally incompetent last year. She petitioned the court, claiming your grandmother was no longer capable of making financial decisions. "What happened to the petition?" "Your grandmother's doctor refused to sign off on it, said she was completely lucid and capable. But Elizabeth didn't give up. She started shopping around for other doctors." I sank into Grandma's kitchen chair, overwhelmed. "How much money are we talking about?" "Close to $60,000 over 3 years, plus the jewellery, some antique furniture that's missing, and several savings bonds that were cashed out." 60,000? My voice came out as a whisper. "There's a paper trail for all of it. Bank records, forged signatures, falsified medical documents. Elizabeth wasn't just planning to steal the house, Daphne. She was planning to steal everything." That afternoon, Detective Morrison turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who listened without judgment as Camila laid out the evidence. "This is extensive," Morrison said, flipping through the documents. The forged signatures alone are enough for multiple felony charges. What about Derek's complaint? I asked. Frankly, it looks like a smoke screen. The transfer on death deed has been on file for months. If you'd forged it, you would have done it right after your grandmother's death, not 6 months before. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. You can't hide forever. We're watching you. Morrison noticed my expression. Harassment? I showed her the text. She frowned and made a note. I'm going to recommend we move quickly on this, she said. The social media campaign, the false police report, now harassment. Elizabeth is escalating. What does that mean? It means we're going to arrest her. Tonight. As we left the police station, Camilla pulled me aside. There's one more thing. I've been in contact with your grandmother's previous lawyer, the one she used before she came to me. Elizabeth approached him 2 years ago, trying to get him to change your grandmother's will. Did he do it? No, but he kept detailed notes of the conversation. Elizabeth specifically mentioned wanting to put Daphne in her place and make sure she got what she deserved for thinking she was better than everyone else. I stared at her. She's been planning this for 2 years. At least, this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision after your grandmother died. This was a calculated long-term plan to steal your inheritance and destroy your reputation. That evening, I sat in Grandma's living room watching the news. The lead story was about a local family dispute that had torn a community apart. They didn't use names, but everyone would know who they were talking about. My phone rang. The caller ID showed the county courthouse. Ms. Daphne, this is Clark Services. I wanted to let you know that Elizabeth has filed a civil suit contesting the transfer on death deed. You'll be served with papers tomorrow. After I hung up, I sat in the growing darkness, listening to the house settle around me. Elizabeth wasn't just fighting dirty, she was fighting to destroy me completely. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated how much evidence she'd left behind, and tomorrow she was going to find out exactly what that mistake would cost her. The arrest happened at 6 a.m. I knew because Colin called me, breathless with excitement. They just took Elizabeth away in handcuffs, he said. Right out of her driveway. Half the neighbourhood was watching. What about Derek and Sonia? Derek's next. Detective Morrison said they're hitting him at his job in an hour. By 8 a.m, my phone was buzzing non-stop. The same people who'd been sharing Elizabeth's posts were now frantically deleting them. Mrs. Patterson left a voicemail that was equal parts apology and curiosity. Daphne, dear, I may have been hasty yesterday. Perhaps we could talk? I deleted it without listening to the rest. Camilla called at 9:30. Elizabeth's been charged with elder abuse, financial exploitation, forgery and fraud. Derek's charges include filing a false police report and conspiracy. They're both being held without bail. What about Sonia? She's cooperating. Apparently, she had no idea how deep this went. She thought her mother was just overly concerned about the inheritance. Cooperating how? She's provided text messages between her and her mother going back 2 years. Elizabeth was very explicit about her plans to teach you a lesson and make sure you got nothing. That afternoon, I drove to the grocery store for the first time since the funeral. Mrs. Patterson practically sprinted over when she saw me. Daphne, I'm so sorry about yesterday. I had no idea. You had every idea, I said calmly. You just believed what you wanted to believe. Her face flushed red, but the Facebook post made it seem so real. Did you ever ask yourself why I would steal from the woman I spent 10 years caring for? Did you ever wonder why I'd isolate her from family members who never visited anyway? She opened and closed her mouth like a fish. I thought not. I grabbed a shopping cart and walked away. The whispers followed me through every aisle, but they were different now. Curious instead of condemning. By the time I reached checkout, 3 people had approached me with awkward apologies. My phone rang as I loaded groceries into my car. Mum's name flashed on the screen. "Daphne, we need to talk." "Now you want to talk? Please, can I come over?" An hour later, she sat in Grandma's kitchen, looking smaller than I remembered. Her hands shook as she reached for the coffee cup I'd set in front of her. "I owe you an apology," she began. "You owe me more than that." Elizabeth said. "She made it sound like you were taking advantage. She showed me bank statements, said you were stealing. And you believed her instead of your own daughter." Mum's eyes filled with tears. "She said you'd been manipulating Mother, turning her against the family. She had documents, Daphne, official-looking papers." "Forged documents. I know that now." She wiped her eyes with a tissue. "But Elizabeth was so convincing, and I owed her money." I set down my coffee cup. "What?" "After your father died, I made some bad investments, lost most of my savings. Elizabeth loaned me $15,000 to keep the house." The pieces clicked into place. "She bought your silence." "She said if I supported her claim to Mother's house, she'd forgive the debt. If I didn't—" Mum's voice trailed off. "She'd destroy you financially." "I'm not proud of it, Daphne, but I was scared. I couldn't lose my house too." I stared at my mother, seeing her clearly for the first time in years, not as the strong woman who'd raised me, but as someone who'd been broken by circumstances and manipulated by her own sister. "Oh, Elizabeth played us all," I said finally. "Can you forgive me?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Colin's name appeared on the screen. "Turn on Channel 7 News," he said without preamble. I grabbed the remote and switched on the TV. A reporter stood outside the courthouse, microphone in hand. Extensive fraud scheme that targeted an elderly woman suffering from health issues. The defendants allegedly stole nearly $60,000 over 3 years and attempted to forge legal documents to steal the victim's home from her primary caregiver. The screen showed Elizabeth's mugshot, then Derek's. Both looked haggard and defeated. The victim's granddaughter, who cannot be named due to the ongoing investigation, spent 10 years caring for her grandmother while the defendants allegedly planned this elaborate scheme. District Attorney Williams says this case highlights the vulnerability of elderly residents and the importance of protecting those who sacrifice to care for family members. Mum stared at the screen. $60,000? Elizabeth's been stealing from Grandma for years. The house was just the final piece. My God, Mum's face went pale. What have I done? You got manipulated by someone who's very good at it. I reached across the table and took her hand. But you're here now. The family's going to be furious. Elizabeth's kids, her husband, all the cousins who supported her. Let them be furious. They picked the wrong side. My phone rang again. This time, it was Detective Morrison. "Daphne, we've got a problem. Elizabeth made bail." My blood ran cold. How? Her husband mortgaged their house. She's out, but there are conditions. No contact with you. Can't come within 500 feet of your property. What about Derek? Still in custody, but Daphne, Elizabeth's lawyer, is already talking about fighting the charges. They're claiming she was acting in your grandmother's best interests, that the money was legitimate caregiving expenses. That's ridiculous. I know, but they're going to make this ugly. Are you prepared for that? I looked at my mother, who was still staring at the TV screen in shock, then at the kitchen where I'd spent countless nights feeding Grandma soup and reading her stories. "Detective Morrison, I've been preparing for this my whole life." After I hung up, Mum squeezed my hand. "What can I do to help?" "Tell the truth," I said. "That's all any of us can do now." But even as I said it, I knew the truth was going to hurt a lot of people before this was over. The civil suit lasted 3 months. 3 months of depositions, document reviews, and Elizabeth's lawyer trying to paint me as a master manipulator who'd brainwashed a helpless old woman. It fell apart in spectacular fashion. Camilla had done her homework. She presented bank records showing Elizabeth's systematic theft, medical records proving Grandma's mental competency, and testimony from Dr. Richards, who treated Grandma for 5 years. Mrs. Gertrude was sharp as a tack until the day she died, Dr. Richards testified. She knew exactly what she was doing when she signed that deed. In fact, she specifically asked me to document her mental state because she was worried about family members challenging her decisions. Elizabeth's lawyer tried one last desperate move, claiming the transfer on death deed was signed under duress. Your Honour, Camilla stood up with a manila folder. I'd like to present video evidence. The courtroom went silent. Elizabeth's face went white. Video evidence? The judge asked. Mrs. Gertrude insisted on recording the signing ceremony. She wanted to make sure there could be no question about her intentions or mental state. The video was devastating. Grandma sitting upright and alert, speaking directly to the camera. My name is Gertrude Quinn, and I am of sound mind and body. I am signing this transfer on death deed of my own free will, because my granddaughter Daphne has sacrificed everything to care for me. She deserves this house, and I want to make sure she gets it without any interference from family members who couldn't be bothered to visit. Elizabeth's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The judge dismissed the civil suit within an hour. The transfer on death deed is valid and legally binding, he ruled. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for additional fraud charges. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Elizabeth pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," she screamed at me. "You think you've won? You've destroyed this family. You're nothing but a vindictive little—" "Ma'am, you need to step back," Detective Morrison appeared, placing herself between Elizabeth and me. "You're violating your restraining order." "I don't care about your restraining order. She's a liar and a thief, and everyone's going to know it." "Elizabeth, stop!" Her lawyer grabbed her arm. "You're making it worse." But she was beyond reason. "You want to know the truth? Your precious grandmother hated you. She told me so herself, said you were a burden, that she wished she'd never—" "That's enough!" Detective Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. "You're under arrest for violating a protective order." As they led Elizabeth away in handcuffs for the second time, she turned back to me with pure venom in her eyes. "You'll get what's coming to you, mark my words." The criminal trial was swift. With Sonia's testimony, the bank records and the video evidence, Elizabeth's defense crumbled. She was sentenced to 5 years for elder abuse and fraud. Derek got 2 years for conspiracy and filing false reports. I thought it was over. I was wrong. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening. Colin's voice was tight with worry. "Daphne, you need to know something. There's talk at the family reunion planning meeting." "What kind of talk?" "Elizabeth's extended family, her cousins, her husband's brothers. They're saying you orchestrated this whole thing to frame her, that you're the real criminal." "That's insane." "I know, but they're planning something. I heard them talking about making things right and teaching you a lesson." "Are you sure?" "Sure enough that I think you should be careful. Maybe stay somewhere else for a few days." That night, someone threw a brick through my kitchen window. The note attached read, "Thief, we know what you did." I called Detective Morrison. "We'll increase patrols in your area," she promised. "But Daphne, you might want to consider that security system we talked about." The harassment escalated over the next week. Dead flowers on my doorstep, my car tires slashed, anonymous calls at all hours. Then Mom stopped answering her phone. I drove to her house and found her sitting in her living room, staring at the wall. "Mom, what's wrong?" "They came by yesterday," she said without looking at me. "Elizabeth's family. They said I was a traitor, that I'd betrayed my own sister for money." "What did you tell them?" "The truth, that Elizabeth was stealing from Mother, that she forged documents." Mum's voice was hollow. They didn't want to hear it. Mum, they said I was dead to them, all of them, 40 years of family relationships gone. She finally looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed. Was it worth it, Daphne? Was proving you were right worth destroying everything? The question hit me like a physical blow. I looked around the empty house, thought about the family members who wouldn't speak to me, the neighbours who still whispered when I walked by. I don't know, I admitted. I can't do this anymore. Mum stood up slowly. I'm moving to Florida. My sister Janet said I could stay with her until I figure things out. You're leaving? I can't stay here. Every time I go to the store, someone asks me about Elizabeth, about you, about what really happened. She picked up a suitcase I hadn't noticed. I need to start over somewhere else. Mum, please. I'm sorry, Daphne. I know you were right. I know Elizabeth was wrong, but being right doesn't make this hurt any less. She kissed my cheek and walked out the door. I stood alone in her empty living room, listening to her car drive away, and wondered if winning had been worth losing everything else. Outside, storm clouds gathered, and I realized the real reckoning was just beginning. The house felt like a mausoleum. Every room echoed with memories of people who were no longer speaking to me. I sat in Grandma's chair, holding the deed that had cost me my family, wondering if she would have wanted this. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Sonia standing on my porch, looking nervous and thin. She'd lost weight since the trial, and her usual perfect makeup was nowhere to be seen. I know you probably don't want to see me, she said when I opened the door. You're right, I don't. Please, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She perched on the edge of the couch like she might bolt at any moment. I wanted to apologize for everything. Your mother's in prison, Sonia. Your brother lost his job. I think we're past apologies. I know, but I need you to understand. I really didn't know how bad it was. Mum told me you were being difficult about the inheritance, that Grandma had changed her mind about leaving you the house, and you believed her. She's my mother. Sonia's voice cracked. I trusted her. When she showed me those bank statements, when she said you were stealing, I wanted to believe her because the alternative was admitting my mother was a criminal. I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse there. Why are you here, Sonia? Because I found something. She pulled out a small wooden box. I was cleaning out Mom's house before the bank takes it. This was hidden in her bedroom closet. Inside the box were pieces of Grandma's jewellery, the missing items from the safety deposit box. But there was something else. A letter written in Grandma's shaky handwriting. My dearest Daphne, I read aloud, if you're reading this, then Elizabeth has probably tried to take what's rightfully yours. I'm not surprised. She's been jealous of you since you were born, jealous of how much I love you, jealous of the woman you've become. Don't let her bitterness poison your heart. You are the best of us, and you deserve every happiness. The house is yours not because you earned it through sacrifice, but because you are my heart, walking around outside my body. Love always, Grandma. My hands shook as I finished reading. Sonia was crying quietly. She hid this from you, Sonia whispered. Mum found it in Grandma's things and kept it. She was going to destroy it, but I guess she couldn't bring herself to do it. Why are you giving this to me? Because it's yours. Because you deserved better from all of us. She stood up, wiping her eyes. And because I'm tired of being part of this family's ugliness. After she left, I sat holding the letter, feeling something shift inside my chest. The anger that had sustained me for months was finally loosening its grip. Colin knocked on the door an hour later, carrying a bottle of wine and a pizza. Figured you might need some company, he said, and carbs. We sat in the kitchen, eating pizza off paper plates like we were college students again. Sonia stopped by, I told him. Yeah? How'd that go? I showed him the letter. He read it twice, then looked up at me with something like wonder. She really loved you. I know, I always knew, but somewhere along the way, I forgot that love wasn't about what I could prove or what I could win. So what now? Now I figure out how to live in this house without it feeling like a monument to everything I've lost. Colin reached across the table and took my hand. You haven't lost everything. Haven't I? My mother won't speak to me. Half the family thinks I'm a criminal. The other half thinks I'm a vindictive bitch who destroyed Elizabeth for revenge. And what do you think? I considered the question seriously. I think I did what I had to do. Elizabeth was stealing from Grandma, forging documents, planning to throw me out with nothing. I couldn't let that stand. But maybe I could have handled it differently. Maybe I didn't have to enjoy watching her world fall apart quite so much. Colin squeezed my hand. You're human, Daphne. You were hurt and angry, and you fought back. That doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't make me a good one either. Actually, it kind of does. You spent 10 years caring for someone who needed you. You gave up your 20s, your social life, your chance at a normal relationship. You did that out of love, not obligation. I looked around the kitchen, seeing it differently now. Not as a prize I'd won, but as a home I'd helped create through years of shared meals and quiet conversations. I'm thinking about turning Grandma's room into a library, I said. She always wanted more bookshelves. That sounds perfect. And maybe I'll start a support group for people who are caregivers. God knows this town could use one. Colin smiled. Now you're talking. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment my heart raced, expecting another threat. Instead, it was from Mum. Settled in Florida. It's warm here. Maybe you could visit sometime. I miss you. I showed Colin the message. See, he said, not everything is lost. I typed back. I'd like that. I miss you too. As the sun set through the kitchen window, I realized something had changed. The house didn't feel like a tomb anymore. It felt like a beginning. You know what the funny thing is? I said to Colin. What's that? I spent so much time fighting for this house that I forgot why I wanted it in the first place. And why did you want it? I looked at Grandma's letter, still lying on the table between us. Because it was home. Because it was where someone loved me unconditionally. Because it was where I learned that taking care of people you love isn't a sacrifice, it's a privilege. Colin raised his wineglass. To Grandma Gertrude, and to new beginnings. To justice, I added, and to knowing the difference between justice and revenge. We clinked glasses as the first stars appeared outside the window, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The house was mine, but more importantly, I was finally mine again too.